Hey there, welcome back. It's Louisa Tannermunson from JulyAstrology, and I've got the July update for July 2023. Now, it's been a pretty high-pressured year so far. I think you'll all agree, right? And I remember earlier on this year saying, March was the busiest time of the year, and that the next busiest time would be July. So we had a lot going on in March. And then we had the eclipse season that really did seem to steal the show. And, a lot of people that I'm working with have been almost thrown for a hoop a little bit since the eclipse season. It was deeply healing, deeply releasing, and there's that like space between where we identify what we might want to heal and let go of and what might be holding us back and where we want to be. There's a lot of people right now that feel a little bit stuck in between that place. And so what I really see for July, which is a huge epic month for a few big reasons, what I see for July is it's a real release factor for people that already feel like they're on their way. And I'm pretty sure that people who feel like they feel things in the post, like people who are psychic, empathic, deeply intuitive, people who seem to pick up on the vibe before everybody else does, like the first people to the intuitive party, I think they'll already be starting to work things out and work out the kinks, at the start of July. I do actually feel that whether you've already started or not, I think July is going to really increase the amount of light here on Earth. I know that sounds really like crazy, but you know what? I'm kind of outing myself now as a bit of a energetic healer on the side. I do sort of, it's not just planets I check in with. I work on many different levels. But what I'm really getting is that there is a lot of change energy, not just from the planets, but it feels like we are upping our game somewhat. So what is coming up? Well, let me just quickly give you a summary, and then I'm going to sort of deep dive into it and look at the actual charts. And then towards the end, I'm going to do a little forecast for each star sign. Now, I do recommend that these star signs are looked at in terms of your ascendant. If you already know what your ascendant is, choose that horoscope or zodiac sign first. You can also look at your sun sign, and there is definitely some resonance there, but I would stick with your ascendant. Anyway, with that aside, one more aside, actually. The timings that I'm doing these forecasts for or from, it's based on London, UK time. That's based on Greenwich Mean Time. It's like the midpoint for the whole of the world. It's where everything else goes from. You're either ahead of the UK or behind the UK. And if you're watching from North America, which a lot of my followers are, you will feel these energies a day before we will. So, for instance, I know that on July 23rd, for British people and people in Europe and North Africa and South Africa, and also in the Middle East, on the 23rd, we have it that Venus is going retrograde, but you have it going retrograde on the 22nd of July. So you might need to just, when you're listening to this, be aware that you might be 8 hours behind. Okay. But the overall feeling of the forecast should stick. It really will stick. I promise. So, what's in the summary of this month ahead? Well, there's a lot going on. We start with, Mercury Cazimi, the sun, or Mercury Cazimi, which is a moment of, deep insight. It's like something is dropping. And again, for North America, that happens for you on June the 30th, which is our July the 1st. So it starts on this kind of great big brainwave, something really going off. And at the same time, Neptune's going retro. So that's, that's setting up July for a pretty big month. 2 days later, we've got the full moon in Capricorn, which is really pretty good at stabilizing factors, in particular, how we might earn our money. It's really getting us feeling about our success and tuning into what feels right in terms of what can we what can we hope for from our outpourings? Then there's not so much going on in that first week. We start off, on a really kind of serious footing, and then there's lots of little aspects going on. The second week, the notable factors are really that Mars is going into the sign of Virgo, and Mercury is going into the sign of Leo, literally the day after each other, according to UK time. And it's making some big aspects. And, I'll be talking through those. Again, I really see that our performance is something that is kind of being raised. It's like we're raising our game. In week 3, I would say the biggest day is the 17th. That's when the North nodes, which I always think of the karmic direction of humanity. You might call it your soul's calling, your soul's direction, your soul's compass point. The North node is changing signs. It does it every 18 months. And it's also happening on the same day as the new moon in Cancer, which again has some really, really strong resonances in terms of upping our game and absolutely letting go of all that is false about ourselves. So it's a really huge day. And I think it takes pretty much the rest of the week, maybe the rest of the month, to kind of process. In fact, like the North Node, the message of the North Node is something that takes 18 months and slightly beyond to process. And then the last week, wow, this is a whopper of a week. In this week, we've got Venus going retrograde and the sun changing signs on the same day. Again, I've got it as the 23rd of July. That's UK Europe time. If you're in North America, that will be on the 22nd. Then on the 25th, we've got this really tight Pluto square. It's a T-square. Pluto is essentially square both the North and the South node at the same time. So this is a huge transformational thing, and I will be talking about that later. And we finish the month with Mercury making his second change in the month, going into the sign of Virgo. So let's dig a little deeper, shall we? So what I'm going to do is bring up the charts now and kind of go through it step by step. So actually, before I bring up the charts, let me just talk about the first couple of days. So in week 1, when Neptune goes retrograde, this is our time to, I always think the planets get more intense when they go retrograde, and we really start to use the energy rather than kind of play with it. So especially with these outer planets, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, which have more of a generational effect on us, they're affecting the generation. They move quite slowly and they really set the scene as to what is going on in life. When they go retrograde, I really think we're taking the material of the outer world and the outer generation and what seems to be going on, and we really start to focus inwards. So Neptune is known, or the way I think of it is, I see it as being a spectrum of connectedness, and also a spectrum of how we lose ourselves in some way, like how we let go of our identity, how we become non-attached to our identity. I think Neptune is really teaching us to be non-personal in some way, and I think the end result is meant to be unconditional happiness and love and joy and full levels of creativity. And so, like, at its highest vibration, I would say Neptune allows us to lose our identity because we are merging with infinity. Like, we look around and we see, like, I'm looking at these plants and I'm thinking, I'm you, I see my connection with all other living beings and maybe all other dimensions. It's very, very trippy. In fact, I'm doing an interview with somebody who is a medium and a channel next month, specifically about a Neptune moon connection, which really shows where we've got enhanced levels of mediumship, like where we can lose our identity a little bit, or merge with other realities. So Neptune is a real game changer. Now, at the lower end of Neptune's vibration, we have that sense of I can't stand being myself. I don't want to identify with myself anymore. It's like, how can I distract myself? How can I forget who I am? I need to forget my reality. And so Neptune going retrograde could be really quite beautiful for some people because we could really dive into it and say, okay, I'm really ready for this awakening moment. And others might be like, damn, I really hate myself. I can't stand it. I need to lose myself somehow. Hopefully, what I'd like to talk about, and in fact, I'm going to be recording a lot more about Venus retrograde and also about the North Node later on this month. I'm hoping that through my my recordings, I can help you if you are feeling like you want to lose yourself in or forget who you are. I'm really hoping I can help guide you up the emotional scale, help you come back into yourself and find freedom in being who you are. I mean, that to me is the ultimate gift, right? To feel absolutely free, and you can give yourself that gift. So Neptune retrograde is going to bring all this to the fore. It's really time to consider our identities, and also our identities in relation to infinity and the rest of everything. And this theme is going to come up again, when I'm talking about the nodes. So, this is a big day. We start off July with such a big theme, boom, there's this inspiration moment from the Cazimi Mercury. And we've also got the sun in a sextile with Jupiter, which is really helping us to raise ourselves up. And we've got this Neptune retro, and the Neptune retro is going to go on for many months. So don't worry, you don't have to do all your navel gazing in this week. You can kind of chill out a little bit. Now, the full moon on the 3rd, this is something I want to start with. Let's have a look at that chart now. So I'm just bringing it up. Let's make it a bit bigger. So if you're in the UK and Europe, that'll be on the 3rd of July at 12:38 p.m. That's when it's at its maximum. That's like absolutely at the sort of fulcrum point of the full moon. If you're in North America, it happens in the evening of the 2nd. Now, what I really like about this, so we've got the sun here in a conjunction with Mercury. You'll see Mercury's moved on a few degrees since the 1st of July. So it's in the sign of Cancer. And the moon is showing up in the sign of Capricorn, and they are making some interesting aspects. So if we look at the moon, it is in this lovely sextile to Saturn. I see this as being very, very supportive because Saturn, although Saturn has a bad rep, Saturn is all about our structures, our internal wiring, I'm guessing, our stability, how grounded we are, how disciplined we are. Do we have levels of perseverance? And do we have enough maturity and also strength of character to be able to have confidence in ourselves when things get a little bit difficult, when the chips are down? Now, anything with Saturn is about our stability, and the moon is about our emotions and our psyche, and then the sun is kind of like our adult self. And so with these guys, all there's this lovely trine to the sun that's very beneficial. This sextile, this shorter blue line from the moon to Saturn, this is all stabilizing all three of those characteristics of ourselves. And so I see this as being really useful, for all of the stability that we've got in our life at the time of this full moon. Our emotions and our personality are really benefiting from these extra structures. I guess that's the easiest way to put it. And then we've got this lovely support as well from Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is the planet of expansion and spirituality and hope and optimism. So, Jupiter buoys us up. I mean, we need Jupiter. Without that energy, we'd all kind of, if we had loads of Saturn energy and no Jupiter energy, nothing would ever get done because we wouldn't have the vision. Jupiter gives us the vision, and Saturn gives us the detail. It's like the difference between CEO energy, laying out the grand vision that people dream and feel like inspired to join and get engaged with. And then Saturn is the sort of middle manager. So you've got Jupiter and Saturn in this lovely sextile. Jupiter is in a trine to the sun and a sextile to a sextile to the sun and a trine to the moon. We've got this lovely sort of cradle effect between the two. If I just zoom out, they're all creating this lovely geometry. And so I just see that there's this lovely balance. It's a really, really good point. And what else is going on that day? Yeah, the moon is also in opposition with Mercury, which we might actually say a little bit more than we might normally say. But, I see this being a time when we can actually start to mobilize our dreams. If we think about the sign of Capricorn, which is actually ruled by Saturn, so this is quite helpful that the moon is in a good relationship with Saturn. This is a very performance related full moon. It's really getting us to think about our maturity, the steps we are taking to realize our dreams. And we've got this hopeful aspect from Jupiter here, really encouraging us on. So I really think that if you've got something that you're reaching for in this month ahead, that this time is really useful for encouraging it, for bringing it up. This is a really catalyzing moment. It's really quite perfect. I will also add in, because I like to use some of these asteroids, we've got Juno here. Juno, she's also known as the goddess of marriage. She gives us determination and commitment and dedication. And so, she's also really helpful in setting this, in kind of stabilizing this. We've also got this interesting connection between Ceres. Now, Ceres is the mother. She's like Demeter. She's Mother Earth. She's the iconic mother energy. And she is in a square to Jupiter, a square to the sun and a square to the moon. She's kind of giving us a little push out of the door. So it's like the eternal father that is definitely represented by Saturn, and, the kind of cool dad, which is like Jupiter. It's like we've got these male archetypes saying, come on then, show us what you're made of. And we've got this mum energy, which is saying, come on, right, I'm kicking you out now. You really do have to take a step forwards. So, on the 3rd of, or the 2nd, if you're in North America, of the 2nd or 3rd of July, I would say this is your time to set yourself a series of goals that you might need to be a bit brave to attempt. You might need to poop your pants a little bit. It might be slightly out of your reach. If it's within your reach, it's not worthy of you. Set a goal that is bigger. Seriously, set a goal that is really huge and just break it down into tiny little steps. You don't even have to know all the steps. You just need to know the first 2 or 3, and then just take a step, and then take another step, and then take another step. And if you don't know where to go thereafter, tune in. I mean, the sun and Mercury, your thinking and your personality and your expression is in the sign of Cancer. I mean, this is a deep place of intuition. So you've got the benefits of this intuition and also the stability and practicality of Saturn saying, you don't have to get there overnight. Take your time, but for crying out loud, get on that path. Take your first step. Okay, so that's really what I think of the full moon. Please forgive the dogs barking in the background. So that's really what I want to say about week 1. I will be breaking these down even further in week by week updates, which I just started doing. Let's move on to week 2 then. What's really going on there? Well, the first couple of days, like the 8th and the 9th, we've got some nice trine energy. We've got the moon in a trine to Mercury, and also Mercury in a trine to Neptune, which is really creating a beautiful sense of communication. We're able to communicate our feelings, and we're actually really quite dreamy and also really quite sort of transcended. We're really looking at the greater meaning of things, which I think is a really nice way to be. The moon also does make a conjunction to Neptune as well, which again brings us into a whole load of intuition. And I think all that stuff that I was talking about Neptune on the 1st, or if you're in North America on the 30th of June, that deep sense of, how do I fit in, and, how can I merge with the collective? There is that sort of dreaminess of the 8th and the 9th. And this leads on to the 10th, when we've got Mars going into the sign of Virgo. And the next day on the 11th, we've got Mercury going into the sign of Leo. Now, what is important, I think, about Mars in the sign of Virgo, and this is something we might actually see. Let me just go back to the full moon chart. Right. This is where Mars is, as you know, right at the start of the month. Like, Mars and Venus have been traveling around together for quite some time, and lots of people have been talking about that. I really like the analogy of female and male, like boy meets girl, masculine and feminine, all balancing out. And it's all in the sign of Leo, which is all about creativity and innocence and playfulness. I was just working with somebody who's a fantastic healer, a brilliant energetic healer, called Scott. And we were actually talking about how adults really F things up because they adulterate everything. You know, they really muck things up, because really what we want is our childhood inheritance, which is our innocence and our playfulness. And we were having a good old laugh about it. So, yeah, Scott Clover, his name is. I'll put a link below. Check that out. He's brilliant. But yeah, Mars is in this, it's been in this like playful place, you know, so we've been encouraged with Venus to like love in a passionate way, to be quite dramatic and to really go with the flow of our creativity and our passions. And Mars has been saying, stand up, you know, really start to project who you are, really start to be proud, start to be a bit fierce. It's okay. You know, you're okay. And at the same time, they've been moving around with Pallas Athena. Now, not many people talk about Pallas Athena. She's really one of the asteroids that a lot of astrologers have in a prominent place. Pallas Athena represents codes, coding, strategy. So, I mean, obviously, you can see what we're working with. We're working with symbols. We're working with codes. We're cracking codes wide open. She is also a master of maths, you know, so any computer programmers, people that work with crypto, people that are investigating things, anyone that's trying to crack a pattern wide open and look at something strategic, possibly hidden. You know, Pallas Athena is really good at that. Now, as we go into the time when Mars goes into Virgo, so when Mars shifts over into this sign here, Virgo from Leo, Pallas Athena is right by Mars's side, and they're going to be traveling around together for pretty much most of this month. And so I think it's important to consider the effect of Mars and Pallas. You know, Pallas Athena is all about strategy and taking a cool approach, not being hot-headed. So the heat from Mars, you know, Mars is the eternal male, the kind of thrusting energy, the anger, the assertion. It's the energy that we need. It catalyzes things. It's the vitality of an idea, and it's really determined. It doesn't want to back down. You know, Mars is also known, you know, his other counterpart, whether you're Greek or Roman, is Aries, which is very similar to Aries, isn't it? Aries, the god of war. So we've got like this kind of warlike energy, that is absolutely thrusting and about vitality, combined with Pallas Athena's, those dogs, keep it down. Don't suppose they're going to listen. What do you think? Let's see what happens. But anyway, Pallas Athena is all about, you know, analyzing things and digging into the patterns and finding them. Wow, that has calmed them down. So Pallas and Mars together is giving us a penetrating insight, really penetrating insight. It's giving us the determined, single, focused, foresight, insight, perspective. It's giving us a laser-like determination. It's really quite phenomenal. And as it goes into the sign of Virgo, which I don't necessarily think is Mars's favorite sign, I wouldn't say, because Virgos aren't really, they're not really known for being kind of super dynamic in that kind of Martian vital way. There must be a cat in the garden. You know, Virgo is all about administration and serving others and getting things neat and tidy. So what I really think is from the 10th, we've got this energy that is helping us find out what is at the bottom of a lot of our resistances, where our life isn't working very well. Virgo is absolutely determined to find out where things aren't fit for purpose. And so we've got this energy to kind of penetrate into our excuses, our resistance, our laziness, our fogging. We all do that. You know, people say, oh, did you do that? Or why didn't you do that? And you'll come up with 1,000,001 different ways, and you might combine them and change the subject and shuffle around. I mean, if you ask a child that, you'll see how they do it. And, you know, to the trained eye, you can see it in adults as well. So this is actually giving us the opportunity to look deep into ourselves and see what's stopping us and put it right. This is very powerful. And with Mercury going into the sign of Leo, like right now, Mercury, as I'm recording this on the 30th of June, Mercury's in the sign of Cancer. And here Mercury is getting us to like really generate an ability to talk about our feelings. Like we're focusing on the past, our history, we're communicating, we're connected in. It's like there's a stream of communication from our younger selves, our inner child, and it's coming out. You know, we're starting to talk in terms of loyalty, family, home, security, how we have that sense of belonging. So that's all on our mind. And then Mercury, the day after Mars moves into the sign of Virgo, here Mercury is moving into the sign of Leo, and all of a sudden we're talking with a lot more passion. We're communicating a different vision. So we've taken what has been in the history, in that emotional history from our families, like I'm stretching behind me, and we're bringing it forward into this kind of visionary place. So I think week 2 of July is quite useful. So yeah, bear with me one sec while I just kind of rewind this. So if you think right at the start, we get this brainwave, this Mercury Cazimi, and we're like, woohoo, big ideas, big vision for ourselves. And we're also challenging our spiritual inclination. Like, how can I merge? How can I feel that quantum belonging? That might be a good way of putting it. And then we've got this full moon urging us to take a step. Take one step. I dare you. Take one step into the future, then take another, and then take another. We've got all the planetary, you know, like we've got a lot of planetary stuff in place to support us to take that step forwards. And then in week 2, Mars and Pallas and Mercury are shivering us along. It's almost like we've had our first review meeting, and, you know, like the full moon in Capricorn is sat there and saying, okay, so tell me, how have you progressed? How have you taken your first step? Oh, well, you haven't taken one yet. Okay, well, look, this is what your issue is. And Mars will bring up the resistance, and it will show you what you need to work on right now to get it done. And then as Mercury goes into the sign of Leo, it's like, okay, I see that. And I can start talking about it now. So it's a really, really good week. And we need to watch. We do need to watch this. And I'll just show you why. Because as Mars is moving into this position here, look what he's going into opposition with. Now, this opposition doesn't come around, let me just check my notes, until the 20th of July. So Mars is not in opposition to Saturn right at the start of the month, but as he moves closer and closer and edges into the sign of Virgo, by the time he's made it into Virgo on the 10th, he's already in an opposition to Saturn. And so I'm going to be talking about that from week 3, which I'm coming to right now. So this is something to watch out for. So let's go to week 3, because what's important in week 3, let's just find the right chart. We've got the new moon, and we've also got the true north node into Aries. I'm going to go with the true north node going into the sign of Aries. Actually, it happens pretty soon after the new moon. Let's start with the new moon. So we got the new moon on the 17th in week 3. And the new moon is in the sign of Cancer. So we were just talking about what, you know, Mercury was like in Cancer. You know, it was really encouraging us to focus on the past a little bit and to understand some of our stories, I'm guessing, because, you know, Cancer holds all those stories in place. Like Cancer is a massive emotions, and it needs that hard casing, that hard shell, so it's gooey insides, and all its softness and sensitivity doesn't get touched. And they got those flipping great big pincers ready to attack anyone that dares ask them about one of these ultra sensitive things that they've not processed the hurt of. So it's quite defensive. It's quite a defensive sign. And so we got this new moon in Cancer on the 17th of July at 24 degrees, almost 25 degrees. And what we've got here, as I see it, is we've got a lovely trine to Neptune. So remember, right at the start, I was talking about the importance of Neptune and what it's asking us to do in this retrograde position. Yes, it's asking us to go deeper into our soul. So yeah, we've got the moon and the sun in a trine with Neptune. That's really bringing a lot of sensitivity up to an already sensitive moon and a sensitive sun in the sign of Cancer. It is absolutely reminding us of our vulnerabilities, like where we feel vulnerable. And if anyone was to question us about our vulnerability, we'd say, oh, well, hang on, I've got this story, I've got this story, I've got this story. Sorry, Cancerians. And, this really goes for anyone with a lot of things in Cancer, or even just like I've got Saturn in Cancer, and Saturn's in quite a strong place in mine. So this does reflect, I need to hold some of this as well. I need to be responsible for my Cancerian energy, but it's bringing up a lot of vulnerability. It's showing us actually where we're still playing a bit small, playing a little bit poor me, playing a little bit like, like a little bit afraid. We need our mummies. The sign of Cancer really reminds us of our parents or our protectors. It brings up our, what went wrong when our protectors weren't around and how we felt unsafe. So the sign of Cancer, I think, is about how can you feel safer? And of course, at the time of the new moon, it's in this lovely trine to etheric, creative, and totally plugged in Neptune, which can really bring a lot of stuff up in your memory banks. It's also connected in a sextile to Uranus. Now, Uranus is a bit of a shocker. It shows consciousness. It shows our ability to hold consciousness. It also shows our ability to change and evolve and innovate. And it's quite shocking. Some of the realizations that come up from our unconscious mind could shock us alive. And so what is going on at this time is whatever we're sensitive about is quite shocking. It feels really raw, really quite real. And here's the big one. And Pluto's going to come into play in week 4 in quite a big way. But the sun and the moon are in opposition to Pluto. Now, Pluto is in a trine to Uranus. It's actually like Pluto is the big transforming agent. It's showing us what we need to change. And it's really playing with power. Now, when I see the sun and the moon in an opposition to something, I always think, okay, this is really showing us our identity and our psyche. The moon here is very much about our psyche. And anything in opposition is showing what we're projecting onto other people. Like we're projecting almost like it's a projection screen onto a big wall. And so at the time of the new moon, we are projecting onto the big wall all the big dramas and all the big control around our life. And it's all outside of ourselves. We can't take any of that power. We can't see any of that power. And it probably looks like all the power exists outside of us. And that power is almost mocking us, showing us how small we are. And like when I'm showing you where the projector is, it's over there, but it's really up high because we feel very small and belittled in this very sensitive place. So what I would say at the time of the new moon, if you've already worked out what your core hurts or the rawest part of yourself is, then this new moon is a fantastic time to look at all those games where you've been playing Little Miss Vulnerable and Little Miss Hurt and Little Miss Story Time. Oh, hang on, let me get my storybook out. You want to know why I'm not feeling right today? Well, let me tell you. So, and so it's like you get your storybook out. Now, this is really showing you that some of your oppressors aren't that big and they're not that strong. In fact, a lot of these oppressors that you created really came from your childhood and were probably very hurt and damaged and abusive, because they are reacting to what's happened to them. And sure, I know that poop rolls downhill, and we can either agree to carry that like some flipping great big weight on our shoulders, like this all we deserve, or we can just like sit for a moment and think, okay, look, I'm an adult. I totally get this. I totally get that there were these awful, painful times. Totally get that, understand that. And I accept it. It was hard. And it may well have crushed me because Pluto's involved, and Pluto shows where we get really crushed and destroyed. And what I see is this aspect is here to show us where we're mature. And, this Cancer thing, yeah, we feel all gooey at this time. We feel very vulnerable. And what we don't realize in this Cancer state is we've got this tough shell, and we're really good at hiding when, if things get too menacing. We've got quite good defensives out there, but we actually are quite powerful in our own right. And this is I see this as an integration point, and we're going to come to even more of this as we turn over the page, go to the next week. But let's stop for a minute. On this day, we've got a chance to integrate like a shadow side of us, where we are putting all the power on somebody else and not taking any responsibility for the power that we may have had. Now, I'm not saying if you've been abused in the past, you somehow deserved it. There's no way I would say that ever. However, we have a choice, not always a very good one, but we have a choice about how we might think about it and what we might do to take steps to be able to move on. Because I don't think power is something that only some people have and others don't. And I know if you've listened to my channel before, you've probably heard me bleating on about, the powers that be, or as I say, the powers that shouldn't be. And it could seem that I see that these guys have all got the power. I say guys, it's everyone, like guys, women, it doesn't matter. There are lots of people that I do see in these very powerful positions, and you could believe that I see myself as a victim and someone small against this like big Goliath character. And yet I really don't. I have done, but I don't right now. I actually see that we enter into these games of playing small and seeing everything else as big. And there comes a time, and it might be now, it could be this month, it might be never. And it doesn't matter if you accept that or not. It doesn't matter. Like, we're all on our own journeys, and it's really important that we enjoy our journeys primarily, but we have this chance to actually see that we have our own power, but we don't have it when we give it away. And there are lots of different modalities, healing things that we can do. In fact, like once Mars and Pallas are in the first few degrees of Virgo, you could be writing it out. You could be absolutely honing in your writing skills, like drawing in all your stories and writing them out as one part of the process. And maybe you start a healing process that you never fully complete, but you take one brave step, followed by another brave step, and you start doing this. And if we do believe in connectivity, which is where I started, Neptune retrograde, we are on a journey of digging in deeper into this connectivity. As one of us feels stronger and thinks, what, damn it, I am powerful, and it's okay. And I don't need to be rebellious. I don't need to become an aggressor. I just need to feel powerful in myself. I need to shine my light, shine my crazy light in the way that I am. From Dr. Dane here from Access Consciousness, he says, what if the wrongness of you is the rightness of you? This is the time for us to realize that what is wrong with us is actually what's right with us. And, as one of you, two of you, three of you start to take a little bit more of your own power back, and by taking it back, I don't mean you steal it back. What I mean is you create space for it in yourself. You see it, you recognize it in yourself. You allow everything to kind of grow. You're sort of like growing in magnitude. As we all do this, we all start to lift up. And then because of you lifting up, someone over there in Asia or Egypt or North America, Canada, Australia, we are all starting to raise each other up. So I think this is a really significant point. And let's not forget, we've also got the North Node changing signs on the same day. So let's have a look at this. So if you've been following astrology for a while and you know about the North Node, it's this point here. All the planets are going this way, anti-clockwise. The North Nodes, I won't talk about what they are. That can come in a different video. But the North Node appears to go the other way. And it takes 18 months to go through a sign. Now, the South Node isn't shown on this picture, but it falls exactly 180 degrees away from the North Node. So if the North Node is here, then the South Node is right here, and they travel together. Now, for the last 18 months, the North Node, which is showing the kind of karmic soul's choice, compass point, whatever, like the direction we're all learning to move into, it's been in the sign of Taurus, and it's very much about our resources. We've been learning what resources we have, not just money. We've been learning money's been a bit tighter. We've also been learning about our personal resources, like what skill set do we have? What talents do we have? What are our connections like? What are our values like in terms of our security, the people we love? The South Node on the other side shows us what we've already kind of done quite well, and where we've already got some competency, and where we find it a bit easy. So whilst the North Node's been going through Taurus, reminding us of where we might take a bit more financial responsibility, a bit more responsibility over our resources, it's coming from a place that we've already learned about guilt, shame, blame, anger, regret, secrets and the danger of them, sexuality when it gets a little bit too crazy, all of the things that Scorpio really encompasses, all of the subjects that are deep and penetrating and uncomfortable, all the things we don't want to talk about when we first meet someone. So tell me about your sexuality, tell me about the guilt your parents put you under, all that stuff. As we moved into that period of time with the North and South Node, we'd already had a ton of this guilt and shaming stuff from the start of the COVID phenomenon. So this last 18-month period has been about our values and how we're building ourselves back up, which is, I think, what a lot of us have done. And it hasn't been that easy. And we have had challenges, and we've had to really trust ourselves and value ourselves. Now, the North Node is moving into the sign of Aries, and the South Node, by default, showing us what we've already got and where our skills are, is in the sign of Libra. So let's take it from the South Node first. What we're really playing with over this next 18-month period is, we've already collaborated with a lot of people. We actually realize how we can be good partners, and how we can come back together. If you think about it, we all kind of fell apart at the start of COVID, and we started blaming each other, shaming each other, or a lot of us did. There were those that did, those that didn't, those that believed, those that didn't, those that were like, don't listen to him. And those were like, I'm going to stop you from listening to him. There were all sorts of we were all pulled apart at the seams. And I think over the last 18 months, we've been slowly but surely coming back together, right? And so actually in this next period, we are reminded of how much we've pulled back together. And yet the North Node is showing us what our challenge is. And our challenge is to also develop self-reliance, which is something that's very much about Aries. It's self-reliance, determination, independence, a sovereign state of being. It's teaching us how can we be ourselves whilst also serving the collective, which is all this partnership up here. Now, at the start of COVID, there were lots of questions about social contracts, and China has, shown us that there's social credit scoring and all things like that. And there's, lots of discussions around the world about what people ought to do and what is the responsible thing to do, this, that, and the other. But I actually see our biggest challenge as the North Node goes into the sign of Aries is to decide for ourselves where we sit. You know, there are bigger entities out there that want us to be really in this place of togetherness and cohesiveness, which may or may not be naturally put together. We might be forced into complying. You will comply. But actually, where the North Node is, it's saying you need to find your own relationship to mandates. You need to find your own relationship to what the norms are. You need to be able to be bold and brave when the time comes to make your decisions. And you need to be able to do that again and again and again. And I truly believe we're going to be challenged to stand firm for who we are. Because you may well have felt like normal for really many, many years. You may have considered yourself to be, in fact, during this drama over the last few years, you may have found that you've become more normal. You've normed because the pressure worldwide has been so strong that you felt that norming energy because it's safer. And we are programmed to find safety. But does safety help you grow? No. It just really doesn't. And here with the North Node in the sign of Aries, we're starting to realize that we're also on our individual journeys. We're on an adventure and we need to grow. We need to grow. And if we don't grow, if we stop growing for some reason, what is going to happen in this world by the time we come to the end of the North Node in Aries in 18 months' time? Where are we going to be if we've stopped growing and stopped dreaming and stopped being okay with being ourselves? Whew, that's a big one. Yeah. And you can see this coming in now. So I was talking about, 3 days later on the 20th, Mars and Pallas Athena are in complete opposition to Saturn. So yes, we've got this penetrating insight to help us get all our stuff in order, get really organized, get up to date, feel like we're on top of things, make our lives feel like they're fit for purpose. And at the same time, Mars in opposition to Saturn, that's quite tricky because it feels like if we don't do it perfectly, we are internally blaming ourselves. You may well find that voice that says, "What are you up to? Bad you." You might find it's your dad or your mum or some other authority figure. Find out who your inner critic is, okay? Because that will really come up around the 20th. Find out who that inner critic is and let them go. You don't have to answer to anyone. You really don't. All that matters is that you are in charge of your life and you are doing a good job of it. Seriously. Now, Saturn, this authority might even come in a fluffy package, because he's in the sign of Pisces. So he looks kind of mild-mannered. It might be someone saying, "Oh, you must do this because this is the good thing. This is the right thing to do." So just watch out for any internal pressures where you're negating that amazing work ethic that you've brought up here, because it's big. Now, let's go into the fourth week. So the last thing I really want to talk about, in essence, is Venus retrograde. And I'm going to be doing some more videos on her. I've already started speaking about her. Venus retrograde, if we think about what does Venus represent, she represents flow, generosity, love. Okay, she's the goddess of love. Also creativity, also money, because money needs flow, doesn't it? She's known as a benefic. She is a beneficial planet, and she kind of brings it all in. She brings us a lot of beauty, a lot of calm, a lot of peace, and everything flows in. There's nothing that is jagged in the Venus energy. It's not about jaggedness. It's about reception. It's about receiving. It's receivership, divine receivership. Now, at the time of Venus going in here, at the time of the Venus going retrograde, you can just see this little tiny R here. Can you see it just there? So she's going retrograde at 28 degrees in the sign of Leo, and over 40 days or so, she's going back to 12 degrees in the sign of Leo. And then she'll start moving forwards again from the 3rd of September. During that time, we review our flow, and we review our love. We review the money that comes in and the flow of the money. We review the good feelings. We review our attachments from those good feelings. A lot of stuff from the past can come up. It's not unheard of to, you find that you're feeling a bit nostalgic about an ex, or you might be feeling nostalgic for an earlier time in your relationship when things were more, passionate or forgiving. And you might look back to times when money was easier. But this nostalgia, it serves a purpose. It's about reconnecting us to that divine flow. So what you might find is somewhere along the line, we've forgotten that we are masterful creators. We've forgotten that actually we have to feel like we're connected to everything, and we have to be prepared to receive. There's this other, I sometimes listen to Marissa Peer, and you can check out her channels. She's on YouTube. She's great. She's a hypnotherapist, and like global speaker, I guess, about transforming your life. And she talks about like the in-breath and the out-breath. Like you receive and then you give. You're always giving and receiving. In our inner biology, you can't give. If you keep giving your breath without receiving the gift of breath, you die. You have to give and receive and give and receive. And so I really see this sort of this Venus retrograde is reminding us that at some point along our journey, we've forgotten to receive all the bounties that Venus has brought us. We've forgotten to be in the flow of love. And so that's why all of a sudden we're looking back to the past and thinking, hang on a sec, it was a bit better then. What's going on? And we might be tempted back into, the past. Some people do. But for most of us, it's just a review point, and it's about getting us back on track. Now, if you are selling something, it's actually quite a good time to sell, because people tend to spend more money when Venus is retrograde, because they're so attached to the idea of feeling better that they attach more emotions to the things they want to buy. So you might find that people spend a bit more money during this time. If you're buying something, it's not necessarily a good time to buy, because you've got rose tinted glasses on. You're thinking back to the past, and you might be buying a house. And as you're looking at these houses, they're reminding you of times when you just felt divine. And yeah, that could help you make that impulse decision and actually commit, but you might end up paying a little bit more. But these things happen. Ultimately, this is to get us back connected and flowing. Now, on the same day, the sun also changes signs, goes into the sign of Leo. And that is reminding us it's time to be passionate. It's time to be creative. It's time to come forwards, shine, and be sovereign. It's really great. So this is, as far as I see this week, is about getting into the flow. Then, and this is the last chart I'm going to show you, and it's Pluto square the nodes, because on the 25th, so just 2 days later, we have got, where is he? So there's the North Node, and by default, the South Node will be here. You'll see the moon's also here, just to add insult to injury, just to make it a little bit tougher. But Pluto is here, right slap bang in the middle. Now, have you heard about the Anuretic degree? The Anuretic degree is 29 degrees of every sign is known as being an Anuretic degree. So I'll tell you about it in a sec. But the North Node, 29 degrees in the sign of Aries. The South Node would be here at 29 degrees in the sign of Libra. Pluto at 29 degrees in the sign of Capricorn, all Anuretic degrees. Now, the Anuretic degree, like all of these degrees from 0 to 2859 are seen to really carry that Aries energy. And sure, the North Node here is carrying the Aries energy, but it's kind of breaking down. It's a bit erratic. It's not a full expression of Aries. It's slightly different, slightly altered, because the very next sign, there's a kind of energetic cutoff. And similarly, the South Node, at the Anuretic degree, it's not, it's slightly erratic Libra. So it's not so partnership oriented and it's not so diplomatic. It's slightly erratic to find its balance. The South Node is a little bit crazy. And we've got Pluto here at the Anuretic degree in the sign of Capricorn, not traditionally Capricorn. Pluto is creating transformation in quite an erratic way. It's like almost grabbing power quite quickly, whereas Capricorn likes a slow but steady plan. So we've got these three, and possibly the moon as it gets closer and closer to 29 degrees. We've got all of these working out together. So we've got this balance point between the South Node, which represents the past karma, and the North Node representing the forward karma, and then Pluto, which is all about transformation. Now, right now, it looks like Pluto is, well, it's retrograde, so it's moving closer to the South Node. So it would appear that we're almost going backwards a little bit, but it's exactly at this balance point. And as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, well, this is a bit of a change and a challenge. We're not in the past, we're not in the future. We're in this period of change. It's like we're stepping forwards. And Pluto does start to move forwards again, mid-October, I believe, off the top of my head. I may be wrong. Put the real date down below if you've got it. I could look it up, but I don't want to ruin the flow of this. I mean, Pluto will be moving forwards again. But I actually, as I'm looking at this, if you think of the nodes, what else is the nodes involved in? They're involved in eclipses. And earlier this year, and I said this right at the start of this video, we had the eclipses kind of creating a little bit of drama for us. I think around the 20th of April, and then was it the 5th of May? I don't know if that's enough time. Yeah, around that time. So we had the eclipses creating some new drama and a new situation for us. The nodes are all about the eclipses. And so really what I'm seeing is we are moving forwards. Whatever is left over from the eclipses, which, as I recall, was quite personal in terms of the rawness of issues coming up. And like I said at the start, I'm still noticing a lot of people are really, they've identified a lot of their core wounds and they're still reeling in them. I see that, the 25th of July marks a transition point when we can all move forwards. Now, the North Node and South Node aren't just about you or me. They're about everybody. We're all doing this together. And Pluto definitely isn't like a personal planet. Pluto's the furthest planet out there that we really, talk about. Pluto has a generational effect. So, as I'm extrapolating this, I'm thinking, well, this is us taking a huge step forward for mankind. I think this is, and I'm not talking in the sense of NASA, we're going to go to the moon and all that. What I'm thinking is we are all raising our game internally, and it's having a massive effect. Now, a lot of people have spoken to me about the Schumann resonance in this last month, because that has changed somewhat. It's kind of fainted quite a few times, and it looks like it's brought in some rather spectacular downloads or vibrational frequencies or ascension codes. So, I think there is a huge shift going on. Last thing then that I'm going to share with you about this month ahead, and then I'll go on to the individual signs. But that is that, Mercury is finally on the 28th, it's shifting into the sign of Virgo. Now, Mercury is super happy in this sign. Like, Mercury is exalted, really happy in this sign, does very, very well. And all of the work that Mars and Pallas Athena have been doing, in spite of Saturn holding us back, it's like Mercury's gone in to lend a hand. It's like, oh, you're still doing your accounts? Come on, give it over to give it to me. I'll sort it out for you. It's like getting that nitty gritty. I really think as we look back over July, we are going to have this kind of deep realization that we've all shifted quite considerably. Not just you, not just me, but your mum and your dad and your siblings and your employers, your friends. And when you look at the governments, you'll be thinking, wow, that's different. Didn't see that coming. Or maybe you did. Who knows? If you're very connected to that Neptune energy, and you're a bit of a medium, you may well have already seen it coming. But yeah, there are some significant shifts in July, and I really see July as being a gift. So there you have it. Now let's move on to the individual horoscope signs. Okay, so the forecast for July for Aries. In the first week, we've got the full moon in the sign of Capricorn, which is really stirring things up in terms of how you feel like you're achieving in life. It's really bringing to the fore issues to do with your output, how appreciated you are, and where your destiny is and your purpose. So I think it's really bringing things to a head. If you follow the advice from the rest of the show, it is time to really start to take some steps forward in terms of the direction that you really want, in terms of your destiny. More so for you than any other sign of the zodiac. It's important that you allow yourself to step forwards. Even if you don't know which direction you're going in, take a step in this month, in particular in the first week. Really, really think about it. In week 3, we've got the new moon in your 4th house, which is really giving you a new start in terms of home and helping you to feel more relaxed in terms of how you can feel steady and stable, how you can feel like you are grounded. It really feels like you've been up in the air for quite some time. And also with the North Node moving into your own sign on the day of the new moon, it really feels like there is a kind of new interest in how you do you know. So as I see it, Aries, is, you know, you're more grounded. You've got an opportunity to really direct what goes on at home. And also it's time to really direct your life. It's time to move forwards. In fact, it's time to shoot forwards. What I see going on for you over the next 18 months in particular, but starting this month, is this kind of rejuvenation of your identity. It feels in many respects that your identity has gone off in different directions in recent times. And right now it's time to really hone in on what is important. And of course, you can't really do that if you don't know where you belong. So I really see that the new moon on the 17th is sparking all these new emotions in terms of where do I belong? How do I fit in? And what does that mean to my identity? Now, in terms of love, and also in terms of your creativity and your flow in life, I would say that in the last week in particular, when Venus goes retrograde, you really want to consider how the things that you've birthed, like the pet projects that you've had all along, how they need to be kind of fallen in love with again. It feels in many ways that you have lost sight of the reason why you've been doing things. It feels like you've started off in a particular direction and then midway through kind of lost that connection to why you're doing what you're doing. And so I really feel that, you know, towards the end of July, one of the things that's going on is you're feeling a little lost. You're remembering the old times of, you know, when you were really fond about your project. Now, in terms of project, I mean, that could be your children, anything that you're birthing. So it could be your kids, your pets, the work you do. If you work for yourself, doing what you love doing, it's about, you know, what comes from your desire. That also could be a new relationship, in particular one that's quite sensuous. So it really feels like as the last week in July comes up, you're being asked to connect back into the flow of what feels good. You know, what feels good in terms of what you're creating and putting out in the world. And if you can hone in on that, then actually that will answer your questions about your identity. So it all kind of comes together at the end. And one last thing, you may well find that you've got the stamina to make changes in your day to day, but it feels like there's a mental blockage or a resistance holding back. The effects of Saturn and Mars in this month ahead are kind of confusing at times. And so it feels like you're ready to like lunge forwards. And then there's something in the back of your mind pulling you back. The important thing is to focus on what is really real. And the resistance feels real. However, it is in that place of your mind where you really can't be sure. You know, it's in the place of memories. So focus on what is real, Aries, and you will be able to move your projects forward. So I hope that's helpful. So Taurus, then, as you go into the month of July, in the first week, we've got the full moon, and that's really, really showing you actually where you haven't opened up enough. It's really highlighting where you've been a little bit closed in your thinking, closed in your philosophies and your religions. And it's really reminding you that it's time to open up and open up really quickly, because there's a real cost if you don't open up. In many ways, it feels like if you don't open up to the possibilities that there are other viewpoints, there are other philosophies, other ways of doing things, other ways of expanding yourself, there's a real danger that you might close down your life in a way that is kind of punishing. It's a time to really, really open things up. And so what I would do if I was in your shoes in this month ahead is I would actually think, okay, how do I want to expand? How do I want to be a bit more adventurous in my life? I mean, Taurians aren't known for adventure necessarily. Whilst they do travel, they tend to stick to things that feel comfortable and safe. So you might want to be asking yourself, where have I been too safe and where can I be more adventurous? And then start to take a step-by-step approach. It's important that you step out of your comfort zone and you do it one step at a time to make it achievable. Now, 2 weeks later, in the third week, we've got the new moon and the North Node, like the North Node changing signs, and that's happening on the same day, on the 17th. It's a pretty big day. So the new moon, as it shows up, is giving you a new start. It feels like whatever you've learned from the full moon on the 3rd, it feels like, yes, you are starting to expand. And now you're realizing, okay, crikey, there's loads of new things I need to attend to. There's new things I need to learn. So you may well be thinking in terms of some form of study or whatnot. But more than that, I think there's this need to get back out into your usual regular environment and to process what you've learned recently in your expanded self and actually start to integrate it at a local neighborhood level. So what I mean by that is it feels like, you've had an opening experience and now it's time to share, because what is the purpose of having an expansion of some sorts if we're not going to share it with those that we really love, with those that we grow with those that we are in a sharing flow of communication? So I do think you're going to get back in the social game, get back into your community and start sharing information. And you might not be purposely saying, psst, over here, I've got some hot news for you, but I just feel that through any sense of expansion and change that's going on for you, it feels really right to share it with your besties, so that's pretty good. Now, in terms of the North Node changing signs, like in this last year, actually, you've learned a lot about yourself in terms of your identity. What this North Node change is showing me, Taurus, is that it's time to go even deeper into your unconscious programming. And really, that goes hand in hand with the full moon on the 3rd and that sort of expansion. It's given you a real good clue as to where you want to go deeper, where there are parts of your world that you still don't quite understand, where there are old memories and filters and mental programs going on, emotional programs. And so I actually see this next 18 months as being one where you are almost changing your the shape of your consciousness. You're really starting to hone in on what's really important and discarding all those things that aren't. Now, alongside that, I also think that in terms of love, there's this opportunity for you to dig deeper into what you love about home, what you love about your sense of belonging and that safety. I think this month is actually rocking you quite considerably. And actually in the last year, in the last 18 months, boy, you have been through some change, and you've also got Jupiter going through your first house as well. So I really think you're longing for the simplicity of knowing where home is. And I really see you turning your attentions to feeling secure and comfortable and cozy at home. As you come to the end of the month, the important thing to focus on is there is this spirit of creation in you coming out of all of these things you've been wondering. You may want to dilute that by co-creating with somebody else, but actually on the things that you're really, really passionate about, I would start creating them on your own first, just to make sure they get off the ground. So anyway, I hope you have a great July. Bye for now, Taurus. Okay, so Gemini, in the first week, we've got the full moon, and that is activating I think a lot of feelings in terms of what's wrong with you, and how you might realize that what's wrong with you is actually the gift. To me, you're reminded at the time of the full moon in Capricorn that there are things that you've been blamed. There's been situations where you felt there was guilt thrown around. There's a sense of regret or loss. And so those issues that feel very triggering for you, they're coming up around the time of the full moon. Now, if I was in your shoes at this time, I would almost see it as the layout for a development program, because when they come up, it's actually going to give you a massive clue as to what's holding you back and where your resistances are in terms of freeing yourself and living in a sense of anticipation and optimism, and with expectations of ease and wonder. And I think that's actually where you'd like to be. Geminis are very much like a butterfly mind. You have to be in wonder and be able to flit around. And so whatever comes up around the full moon, like, make a note of it, jot it down somehow. This is a really big clue as to what to work on first, what to work on second, what to work on third and fourth and fifth and sixth. It's a time to realize that there might be a mentor that you want to bring in to help you explore and expand on some of these closed down, restrictive feelings. But yeah, I think that's quite beneficial. The new moon 2 weeks later on the 17th is a really, really big day. It's really bringing about this feeling of, okay, it's time to change in terms of the way I value myself, but also in terms of how I bring in money. So it's very much a time where you can celebrate actually how ingenious you are, how flexible you are, and how that has stood you in really good stead. At the same time, you've got the North Node going into your 11th house in the sign of Aries, and that's really bringing up this feeling of a need for independence in your friendship groups. So I think, over the last 18 months in particular, one of the things that's been going on for you is you've been diving into a load of old memories and diving into a lot of old programming and things that maybe just aren't relevant to you in your current life. And now with the North Node shifting into the 11th, it's really bringing up a feeling of, okay, so, I now know more about myself, and yet I'm still in the same friendship groups. I'm still in the same networks, and I actually feel quite different. And so what I really see is the core change that's going on right now, in particular, which you'll probably feel quite acutely for a few months, but is going to be going on for the next 18 months, is you learning to be more independent in these networks and these groups. And in fact, like freeing yourself, cutting yourself loose from some of them, and then actively seeking out ones that are more appropriate. So I actually think in this next 18-month period, you're going to be doing a bit of shuffling around and learning more about the challenges of networks, the benefits of being part of a network, but also very much in how you can retain your integrity, your authenticity, and your independence of thought. I think that's really, really important. And you may well also choose to focus on your local friendships as well, because as that's going on, a week later when Venus goes retrograde in the area of community for you, which reminds you of all the people you've ever known and all the connections you've had throughout your life, I think you'll be reminded, actually, okay, some of these just aren't me anymore. These don't feel very relevant to me. And so as Venus is retrograde from the 22nd or 23rd if you're in Europe, up until the 3rd of September, really what you're going through is this period of discernment, Gemini. That's what's going on for you. You're going into this time of discernment in terms of how you're spending your time and who you're spending it with. And then, like when you get very, very clear about what works for you, you're going to be so nostalgic and really want to connect with those people. But it's really going to sort out the wheat from the chaff. If there are any problems coming up in this month ahead, it's that you really want to change things at home. Like you can see that most of these changes you're going through really start at the home at a behavioral level. And yet it feels like the way your career is going, it's pulling you away from the home where all the change is taking place. So some interesting tensions there, Gemini, in the month of July. I hope this is useful for you. Have a great month. So Cancer, now this is quite a big one for you because you've got your new moon in your own sign at the end of the month, around the mid-month on the 17th, but you've got the full moon in your opposite sign in the first week, which is in the sign of Capricorn. Now this is a really beneficial full moon. I really like the layout of it, and it is, I think, giving you some assurances that you can start to work in a way that's really beneficial. Your emotions are engaged with your ambitions. And what's really coming out, I think, is that for you to really start to achieve, there is this need for partnership, and you can't really avoid it. It's really important to look at the practicalities that some of your colleagues, some of your deepest friendships and your partners are bringing. They're bringing you a stability in this month ahead. And there's some tension there because you might actually want to be doing this project on your own. And you might be wanting to take bold steps forward in life on your own. And yet it feels almost like as you start to take a step forwards, you're reminded of other people and why you need them. First of all, everything that you see in these other people, you have in yourself. You're just not able to access it right now. You're kind of projecting seriousness. You're projecting capability on other people in your life. And I would really urge you to see where you're capable and practical yourself. Now, over the next 2 weeks, as the moon moves around and joins with the sun on the 17th, you've got this really big opportunity to assert who you are and to get very clear about who you are and what your contribution to your life, but also to the lives of others is. You can get really, really clear about that. And also with the North Node on the same day, on the 17th, highlighting a part of your chart that is all about your destiny, all about your output and how much gratitude and appreciation you want to feel. I really feel like the 17th is a big day for you because it's time to launch yourself, or at the very least, launch your intention. Now, I'm not saying you have to do a big old launch. You have to get flyers and a website. You don't have to do any of that. You don't even have to mention it on social media. All you need to do is decide for yourself what you stand for, where your direction is, and to feel it into being. Cancer, or Cancer ascendant, you are very, very intuitive. And the more you can feel the changes you want to bring about into your life, the easier it's going to get. Over the next 18 months, the position of the North Node is really going to get you to focus on your output and, where you are in your career, where you are in the standing. Like, do you feel like you're standing in the world? Do you feel like you've achieved something? These are all huge issues. Now, whilst this is all going on and you're thinking in terms of your output and in terms of your success. It's actually also a time when you're reviewing your income potential. And when Venus is going retrograde starting in the last week, which is going to last you until the 3rd of September, it's a time when what's really clear to you is what you were doing in the past was maybe more effective. And in the recent times, you've gone slightly astray. So where you were doing well, you possibly innovated a bit too far and took yourself ever so slightly off. And so I really see that this is a time to love how you earn. It's important that you do that and feel connected to what you're providing, but it's also important to connect into what's going to work. And I would really do some soul searching towards the end of the month and pretty much for the whole of the summer to really devise and get very clear in your head where your value is and what it is that you're trying to do, so you can work out the difference from how far off you've strayed in directions. All of this can be, I think, put right with a bit of applied study and a bit of applied research. Now, if you're finding that as you're researching, all of a sudden you're coming up against blocks, it's because you're researching at too high a level. So keep it basic, keep it factual, keep it short and sweet. All of the answers you need, you can find easily. So anyway, I hope that's helpful for you, Cancer. Hey, Leo. So in the first week, we've got the full moon, and it's activating an area of your chart that is all about your effectiveness in life. I mean, how happy are you in terms of the pace of your life, in terms of how you're managing your home, your work, and your health as well, because that's all to do with your day-to-day living. So the full moon's going to activate things here, and yeah, you may well find that you're not entirely happy, but it's a really good time for you to get very clear. Now, this full moon has got a lot of strength, a lot of structure, a lot of hope, and a lot of, I would say, stability. And if you start to zero in on where you want to be, and also if you can be kind of loving about what you don't want in your life, don't like put yourself down or anything. Just say, okay, yeah, that's not for me. This is for me. You know, the more you can be drawing in the styles that you want, I really feel that you can make some really deep and permanent changes. It might seem a little bit drudgy at first, but it's going to get off and carry a momentum. So the full moon is there really as a trigger to show you what you're not quite doing right yet and how you can improve upon your life. It's about showing you just how accomplished you are, but also just how a small tweak will create such an increase in the momentum and the direction and the speed of what you're manifesting. So that's useful. 2 weeks later, on the 17th, you got the new moon that is kind of stirring a few things up in a very sort of unconscious part of your chart, in a place of the past, in a place of maybe what you're trying to hide from yourself. So the new moon here is, I think, really stirring up a sense of new possibilities for you and your emotions, and for maybe a release of what you've been keeping hidden. Maybe in the 2 weeks of you working out what you need to do on a day-to-day level, you've realized that there's a part of you that's just not expressed, that there is a part of you that you keep hidden from people. And maybe there's the realization that actually, if you're keeping stuff hidden, there's some kind of resistance, and that's not healthy, full stop. So I really see the new moon as an opportunity for you to dig deep and realize that it's time actually to be a lot more passionate about who you are, and not keeping part of yourself hidden away in the background. It's time to bring it to the foreground. So I think that's quite helpful. On the same day, the North Node is also activating a very expanded side of your chart, and that's going to be an 18-month long transit. It's going to be really encouraging you actually to be more adventurous and be more innovative, and also more independent in the ways you're wanting to expand in the world. So I see this as being beneficial. And if you've got habits and tendencies and things locked into secrecy and hidden away, you're really not going to be able to expand. So I really think the key is, you realize your life wants to work smoothly. You realize you want to expand beautifully and magnificently. And the thing that's holding you back is the internal programming. It's like, let's make a small tweak and let's see what comes of it. Take these small steps, unlocking your psyche, and you'll be really stumbling on one of the best gifts for you. Speaking of, in the last week, when Venus goes retrograde in your own sign, I actually see that you're going to be falling back in love with yourself. It is a time to really realize that actually, I think you've been treating yourself as a bit of a commodity rather than really appreciating the efforts that you go to, the kindness, the generosity, the hopefulness, the kind of innocence that you've got, and the playfulness. It's very easy to get wrapped into cynicism, and it's very easy to get too rational and really not to focus on the magic of who you really are. And the secret might lie in unraveling your age a little bit. If you're able to go to an unadulterated part of you, if you're able to connect to a younger part of you that seems more joyful, that's giving you a step in how you can reclaim your identity and really feel integrated. So anyway, I'm going to leave that there for you, Leo. I hope that's helpful. So Virgo, in this month ahead, the first week has got the full moon in your 5th house, in the area of what you're putting out there, in the area of your creativity, in the area of joy and passion and really what you're birthing. Now, this full moon could really signify that some of your creations have got a little bit too big, a little bit too unwieldy, whatever that word is I'm trying to come across. They've got sort of difficult to handle. There you go. That's a better way of saying it. So, you might choose to ask yourself, okay, something has got out of hand. And I don't feel very much in control, which is a bit of a danger signal for anyone with a strong Virgo kind of theme in their chart. So, it's like, how can I bring my birthings back into a useful shape? Now, the good news about this full moon is it's quite structured and it's very hopeful and it's got some really good aspects to it. So I actually think as it gets out of shape and you realize you can't quite handle it, you've got this opportunity to realize what's not quite working and to tie it back together, to really draw it back in and to enjoy the process of being playful and putting it back together in a shape that's going to work much more effectively for you. A couple of weeks later, on the 17th, this is a big day. We've got the new moon activating an area of co-creation and friendship and networks. And there's a lot of power in this area. So this new moon, I think, is really fantastic if you're wanting to create even more. So if you think about your original creations that got out of hand, what you might be realizing by the 17th is, what would make them so much better is if I had someone to monitor it with me, to check it with me, if I had someone to hold space for this idea to mature in a beautiful way. So I think the new moon represents a time when you want to draw people into engage people with what you're passionate about. And I think you will find the right people to match into your intention. So it's really quite powerful. At the same time, on the 17th, we've got an 18-month change. So the North Node, which has been in recent times helping you expand your vision and to feel more elevated and feel more able to hold multiple views and perspectives at the same time. It's really shifted you actually up a gear. This next shift that's going on, it's starting on the 17th and it'll be taking you for another sort of 18-month holiday. This is actually drawing all of that wisdom that you've acquired over the last period, and it's getting you to apply it to what really matters. So it's not just about having the knowledge and the wisdom. It's now applying it to every hurt, every cut and scrape, every secret, every family shame, every guilt, every anger, every regret. And it's quite relentless. I would imagine that in the first month, so July, maybe August, you'll be very aware of where you're getting triggered. And then over the next 18 months period, you've got this beautiful time really to start to explore this. And of course, you've already had the benefits of expanding your mind beforehand. So this is really quite useful. Really, what it's about is getting organized and organizing your thinking, making sure that it's all fit for purpose. It's all going to work for you. Towards the end of the month, then in the last week, there is this Venus retrograde, and it's really stirring up your memories. It's really stirring up all the old things, a lot of the hidden stuff. So funnily enough, some of the stuff I've been talking about, but I would say it's memories that have really stuck and created a change in your behavior. It's like your internal operating system needs to be loved back into being. It's time to realize that you've been applying rationality and judgment to your inner consciousness. You've not been very kind to your higher self. I'm hoping that at the end of this period, at the end of July, and on the 3rd of September and thereafter, when Venus starts to go direct again, it would be really wonderful if at the end of that, you've got this sense of gratitude for all the different traumas you've been through, for all the different disappointments that you've managed to hold and managed to work with. This is a time to recognize what you've coped with and to really love yourself through it, and to say, Virgo, you are completely enough. You are absolutely 100% good enough. So hold that thought as you enter into July. Have a great month ahead. Bye for now. Okay, so Libra, in this month ahead, in the month of July, in the first week, we've got this very strong full moon that's really stirring things up at home. It's really creating this sense that there's like mountains being built out of these molehills, these little hiccups, and all of a sudden they've grown up really quite big. The great news is about this full moon is you can really take action and really start to plan a way forwards in terms of how you want to live and what you need to achieve that. So I don't know if you've got some big house goals, like you want to move house, you want to renovate, you want to change the schools or something, or I don't know, there could be anything, any number of different variables that are affecting your home life. But to me, it feels like it's time for an overhaul. And what I want you to really understand is you can totally do it. It's very easy to feel despondent, especially, with Capricorn in this area of your chart. But this full moon is really going to show you that you're a lot more powerful than you realize. There's a lot more that you can do. And I think if you take it step by step, it's going to all come into play. It's all going to work out quite nicely. Now, the big news, I think, for you this month, well, there's a couple, but the first bit of big news, I would say, is the 17th, when we've got the new moon in an area of your accomplishment, your reputation, your career, your output, how you stand in the world as an adult. And this new moon, I think, is really going to set you on a good path. It's really going to encourage you and highlight just how capable you are. And it's kind of lifting you up. It's putting some wind, beneath your wings, or sort of puffing out your sails so you can sail off in a lovely direction. So I see this as being very beneficial. So I would quite possibly think in terms of, how can I impact my career? How can I move forward in a graceful and easy way? Graceful and easy being ways that, or words that really appeal to a Libran mindset. Now, also on the 17th, the North Node, which for quite some time has been stirring up a bit of trouble in your life. It's you've gone through a period of a little bit of unrest, really. It's almost feeling like your partner or your birth family have been bringing trauma to your door. It almost feels like there's been all sorts of blame and shame and guilt and anger and regret and different behaviors have come out of that. Well, the good news is, as the North Node is turning more into a place of your relationships rather than the baggage of your relationships, this is actually, I think, going to put you in a much stronger position. Now, as I'm looking at this, to me, it feels like you see that change is possible for all of your partners. And by partners, I'm not suggesting you've got lots of romantic partners, although Librans are known to flirt a little bit. But I'm really thinking of the people that you partner in life with. So it could be a business partner, it could be your husband or wife. It could also be family members that you're really, really close with, and they're like your best friends, you know. To me, it looks like you see that your partners are always in this space of continuous development, and with the South Node in the place of Libra in your own sign, it feels like you've got it sorted at some level, and the projection of problems and karmic direction is squarely on the shoulders of those you love. What you need to see, I think, Libra, is it's something that you're not prepared to see in yourself. You know, the struggle of other people that you're close to. You know, birds of a feather usually flock together, and you're in the same group as them. There's something going on, you know, it's not just them. And you may well find that they feel like you're putting things on them, you're projecting. So get really clear in this month ahead. It's really important. And for the next 18 months is, where are your boundaries? And are you pushing projections onto those that you love? And if you can get clear about that, you know, in this next month or two, that's going to stand you in really good stead. Last of all, probably what I really want to share the most is that Venus, your ruling planet, is going retrograde. And this is a big deal. She's going retrograde in a place of your friendships and networks. And she's really bringing up this sense of redirect. It feels like it's time to love the people that are in your life, love the networks that you're in, and be aware that at the end of this session, at the end of this retrograde, which stops on the 3rd of September, that your friendship groups and your peer groups are likely to be altered in some way. You know, you may well find that you've stuck with the same groups for a long time because you felt obliged. And actually, what's coming up in this month ahead, in this next few months ahead, is that it's time to really make sure you've got the right peer groups around you to co-create with. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a shuffle. And it's important not to feel guilty about it. You know, we're all doing our life in our own way. The most important thing is that you keep your vibration light and bright and connect only with those who are really on your wavelength. And I really see that that's a possibility for you. Whew. Scorpio. So let's have a look at July for you, Scorpio. Now, the first thing that I think is, sorry, I'm a bit shifty. Going through all these signs, I'm needing to roll my shoulders back a little bit now. So Scorpio, in the first week, we've got the full moon activating the area of your community. So first things first, I don't think you need to expect things to stay the same. To me, it feels like your community, the local area around where you live, your old friends and people that you've known in your life for ages, people in your work situation, for instance, it all feels like it's getting a bit stirred up in them. It feels like the people that you are usually relating to on quite a frequent basis, they're getting hot under the collar. It's a time to really reevaluate what your contribution is to the community. How communal do you want to be? And you might also find that this stirring up is also going on because of the way you're communicating. You know, it feels like some of the words you use trigger a reaction on the day of the full moon. So just watch out for that. You know, if you've got if you've got a previous conviction of stirring people up with the language you use, which you may well do, because Scorpios can be quite provocative, you might want to consider that this full moon could send people over the edge. A couple of weeks later, around the 17th, we've got quite a big week, like leading up to it and just beyond for a few days after the new moon. So the new moon is really bringing in this sense of it's possible, there's an adventure, and it's going to involve some learning, some expansion. I need to look at where I've stopped learning. I need to restart my learning. So I actually think you're going to be going really deep and getting quite excited about it. If you've got a pet subject, a hobby, something that you already have some knowledge of, but you really want to get deeper and deeper and deeper into it, I just see this as a brilliant time. I would, though, because I like to study, but this is a great time for you. This is a time when you might also consider an adventure. Are you actually happy in your local environment, or do you need to sod off and do something away from home, something that's going to grow you, stretch you, and change really the shape of who you are? So this is a big possibility. Coupled with that, on the 17th, the North Node, looking at your compass, I guess, your soul's compass, it's moving into the area of your work and your day-to-day running. And so actually the next 18 months is going to really help you get sorted out in terms of what's real in your life, what you want to keep, what's working, what's flowing. The North Node always shows where we have a bit of difficulty in manifesting the area that it falls in. And so, it's likely to stir things up on a day-to-day level. You may well find that one of your challenges is that you find your life a little bit boring. It's not quite inspiring enough. Hence why this new moon in this adventurous place of your chart is really speaking to you. It's getting that North Node change onto the right kind of gear for you. Get in the right gear, get in the right lane. You're wanting some adventure, and at the same time there's this call to kind of manage your life on a day-to-day level. It doesn't quite work. So I do think you're going to be bolder about how you want to live, and you're going to be rewriting the rules. You might find there's not a blueprint for living the kind of life you want to live, but that is your deepest challenge right now. How exciting. In the last week then, when Venus goes retrograde, you may well find that some of the values in terms of your career and your relationships with authority, that they are slightly strained. It just feels like it's a time to reevaluate what's working. Pay it some attention. You might notice that, yes, it has worked in the past, and actually what's going on right now is just slightly off. You need to do some tweaks. I would analyze it and really consider for a moment, like when you started to come off track, when you started to care more about power than destiny. And if you can use this Venus retrograde period from the 22nd, 23rd of July, right the way through to the 3rd of September, if you can use this time to reconnect to your destiny and kind of wave goodbye to power trips, this is going to set you up in a really great way to have that adventurous lifestyle that works for you. So, I'm going to leave that there, Scorpio. I think I've said what I needed to say. Have a great July. Hey, Sagittarius. So, this is it's an interesting one. There's a lot to do with money and values in this month ahead. So the full moon, right at the start of the month, is really reminding you of your financial situation. What's working, what's not, what's gone wrong. There might be something that makes you a bit hot under the collar, and you think, oh, crikey, I didn't prepare for that. And you could go into cycles of guilt, shame, and embarrassment. It's important that you don't do that. Literally focus on you as a creator and how beautifully you've managed to bring earnings in, resources in. Notice how you value yourself, and just trust that whatever financial issues are coming up, they're there to test you so that you realize the true value of who you are, so that actually what's really happening is you're thinking, yay, I know that I'm more valuable than I thought I was. So it's almost like you're revaluing yourself. It's useful stuff. The new moon on the 17th is a really, really big day, because on that day there's also changes with with the sign of the North Node. Now, the new moon, it's highlighting the areas where you may have felt that embarrassment. So I really see it going hand in hand with the full moon on the 3rd of July. It's emphasizing, it's almost like the final piece of that puzzle. So, whatever came up for you around that time, by the time of the new moon, it's like, okay, so I've got these issues. How does that fit in with the finances of other people? How does it also fit in with the value that other people see in me? So for instance, like blame and shame and embarrassment and regret and things like that, they're all things that we feel because of what we think other people are putting on us, which may or may not be true, but it's kind of, we take it on for them, like big old daft dogs, like we're like so at some level we so love the people in our lives that we take a load of trauma from them, like we take baggage. And so I really see the new moon as a time of clearing for you to say, enough of this baggage, enough of these excuses, because I think these people that we collect the baggage of, actually they serve us a purpose. They give us the excuse as to why we're not performing. So I really see, from the full moon to the new moon, and the fact that the full moon has got some really great and beautiful aspects to it, with Jupiter and Saturn really showing that you can be stable and also kind of expanded in how you're stepping forwards through your financial difficulties. I actually think to get this to work, you need to let go of any shame of not earning, or any shame of not being able to provide, or any shame or embarrassment about your performance. Let it go. It's just a remnant of a distant past, and it should stay in the past. It really should. Now, on the 17th, again, there's another shift, and that's when the North Node activates a really creative part of your chart to do with passion, to do with like what you're birthing. So it could be your kids at a very mundane level, even though your kids obviously aren't mundane to you, they're absolutely special. It could be a hobby that you've turned into a career. It could be a new sensuous relationship, because new relationships fall in this area too. But essentially it's about what you're passionate about, what you want to bring in more, where you want to have more fun, innocence and freedom. So the North Node is really, I think, showing you how serious you've been over the last couple of years. And you may well have bored yourself by being, woe is me, my life is misery, it's so much drudge. And actually what's coming in now is this invitation to manage your life, but from a joyful perspective. And if you can do that and crack it, you're going to have an amazing 18 months. You're going to see some really big changes in your earnings, and also feel so much freer from all those a-holes, frankly, who you felt have put stuff on you. And to be fair, when we often feel like we're being projected on, there usually is something. There's usually no smoke without fire. So I see that this is actually the start of a very liberating time for you. Now, the icing on the cake comes in week 4. In week 4, you've got Venus going retrograde in this place of adventure. And Venus retrograde, yeah, it's about love, but it's also about the flow in our lives and the reconnection, our loving reconnection to things that are important to us. So for instance, the 9th house looks at adventure, it looks at expansion of spirituality, religion, politics, publishing, so many different things about higher thought, also about emigration. And so when Venus goes retrograde in that area, it's really important that you focus on all of those things that I've mentioned in a way that's loving. So for instance, you may well have found that in recent times, even though you are quite adventurous by nature, Sagittarius, that you've started to, kind of resent your adventurous side, or resent your curiosity because it's taken you down some blind alleys. It's really time to love it back into being, because in the resentment of it, it has become a problem, and it's become formulaic, and it's become almost a life sentence. It's really important to reconnect to the loving feeling of your adventurous and expanded spirit. And only from that place are you going to be able to move on and find that freedom. So I really urge you, Sagittarius, to do that as soon as you can. So anyway, I hope that's helpful for July and gives you a sense of hope and optimism. You are going to get through these money issues, and you're going to do it by having fun. Doesn't get much better than that, does it? Okay, so Capricorn then. Now, this is a big one for you. The full moon is in a really personal place. It's in your own sign on the 3rd. And boy, is it changing the way you feel about things. You may well feel like a little bit triggered, a little bit shocked. You may feel like things are really coming at you, and it's very difficult to kind of swerve them like some ninja. This is time to reevaluate who you are, and also how you look is very much about your personal appearance as well. I see the full moon, given that it's got such great connections to Jupiter and Saturn, amongst other things. I actually see this as a time for you to say, okay, time for a rebrand, time for a makeover. I am freshening up. I'm going to really sort of redecide like what is my unique selling point. And you're talking about yourself as a commodity, which of course, Capricorn, you would be, because you do like to talk about things as commodities, as in general. But the full moon is quite like startling for you. It really is resetting you and really kind of setting the pace for this month ahead. Quite exciting. In week 3, we've got quite a lot of change going on. First of all, the new moon is occurring in your nemesis sign, in the sign of Cancer. And you may well find in trying to relaunch yourself that by the time the 17th comes along, you're actually feeling a little bit insecure, believe it or not. The time of the new moon is going to remind you of the softness and the compassion and the intuition that everyone else seems to have, and you seem to lack. And you might also notice that other people around you seem to have more loyalty or more trust, and all these other things. And actually, what I would really urge you to do is just to see where it is in yourself. And I think that's the whole purpose of the new moon. So whatever you decide you're lacking in, that is your key to recognize that you have it, and to, like, in terms of rebooting your personal image, you might, instead of say, yeah, I'm a great career person, I'm climbing, I'm dedicated to my work and blah, blah, blah. You might actually want to rewrite it. You might want to, at the time of the new moon, it's time to go back and say, okay, I forgot. I'm also quite vulnerable at times. And from that comes a really great sense of intuition and a sense of deep knowing. And because of that, I actually do make some good relationships, are really quite strong and really, really loyal. So what I'd really like you to do, if you start to feel insecure around the time of the new moon on the 17th, is to take what you're feeling insecure about and actually wrap it into your rebranding of yourself. You'll find it broadens and deepens your whole perspective of who you are. And I think when you really see that you are an entire person, that is rational and also emotional, that is practical and also spiritual, you're just going to have so much more fun. It's you're going to be really grounded in a way that's going to help you launch yourself superbly, supremely. Also on the 17th is a shift in your perspective. So the last 18 months or so, when the North Node has been in the sign of Taurus, has really given you a chance to expand what you're passionate about. So it hasn't just been about expanding your income, which is often a priority. It's been about doing something that also brings you a lot of pleasure and a lot of joy and intimacy, in fact, from being joyful from yourself and with how you're spending your time. It does create intimacy because it's a very real thing to do. And the challenge for you in this next 18 months period is, how can you bring that intimacy and that knowing and the joyfulness of what you've been learning into your home? Now, that really kind of mirrors I think the message of the new moon, which is reminding you of where you're vulnerable. Over the last 18 months, there's been this chipping effect on the idea of who Capricorn is. And, where you may have seen yourself as quite stoic and untouchable with good boundaries, you got a cracking sense of humor and you can have fun and make friends, but they get a certain part of the way in and then they often don't get much further. So in this last 18-month period, you've really chipped beyond that. You've really created more space for yourself. And actually now the real challenge is to integrate that vulnerability into your home so that everybody feels that sense of inclusion and so that your house feels more welcoming. And ultimately that you get to some of the root causes of why you feel vulnerable. And the fourth house is often the place where our vulnerability comes from. So I see this as being quite a unique time for you. In the last week when Venus goes retrograde, don't be surprised if you start to feel, think about old lovers, old loving relationships, old friendships, any kind of old relationship that kind of went a bit sour, but you're now pining over it a little bit and realizing, damn, if only I'd been a bit more available, if only I'd been a bit more intimate, I could have had a very different outcome. That's life. That is life, unfortunately, and we do notice that we might make a mistake and it's important to move on from it. What I would really say is, whatever comes into your mind, like when you think of that past relationship and think, oh, I'm really nostalgic for it, I really miss it. What is what's best. All old relationships are old relationships for a reason. There must have been something quite big other than a lack of intimacy on your part that created that. They would have also been creating that split with you at some level. But look at the vulnerability of it. Look at the beauty of it and then say, okay, what was good about it? Okay, that's what I'm missing in my life right now. Okay, so it might have been a sense of fun. It might have been a sense of spontaneity. So whatever you're pining for, it's not the relationship, it's the quality that was in the relationship. So I hope that's really helpful for you. Have a great month. Hey, Aquarius. So your month ahead, in the month of July, it all starts really with the full moon, which really rocks you, I have to say. It rocks you in a good way, and it might also terrify you a little bit because, you're known for being quite quirky in the way you show up in the world. And actually, where the full moon is residing in your chart, it's actually showing you how normal you are. It's showing you, it's highlighting how normal you are, how steady you are, how rational you might be. And that's kind of scary. You might realize that you're not quite as different, not quite as exciting, not quite as unusual. And it's a big thing because you'll be wondering, at the time of this full moon, well, how do I differentiate myself? How do I know what my thing is that I contribute to the community? Because obviously Aquarians also have that very strong need to contribute. And I think this is going to be a theme that comes out in this month ahead. What I would say about this full moon is it's very strong and it's going to really help you identify actually what is good about being normal, where actually when you're being normal, you're actually being probably quite functional. Actually, that's not necessarily true, because lots of people copy each other, and then that's not very functional, is it, necessarily? But what the full moon does is it really highlights, especially seeing as it's got some really great strong aspects, it's highlighting the parts that are more regular and are working, and it shows you how you can start working it a little bit harder. It's also showing you parts which maybe need an update, you know, like where you've got some old hidden views and they're coming out. So you might also want to think about your unique selling point, like what is unique about you and how you can get there. And actually, this full moon will show you which practical attitudes and belief patterns you've got in place that will help you do it. So I do think you can take steps to kind of out yourself about who you really are. This actually, you know, this is, I really like, and I think I said this phrase earlier, Dr. Dane here from Access Consciousness. It is, what if the wrongness of you is the rightness of you? And we could flip it around and say, what if the rightness of you is the wrongness of you? So I really think, you know, the full moon is bringing up feelings of rightness and wrongness, and that could be difference versus normality. And actually, probably the real answer for you, Aquarius, is that it's okay to have your differences, and also those areas where you are in alignment with everyone else. We all have different ratios and balances of both of those, and we need those to survive. If we're all the same, you know, our culture would collapse. If we're all different, nothing would get done. So, you know, this is really quite a special, if not confusing, full moon. Now, 2 weeks later, around the 17th, the new moon is highlighting new work practices. So, for instance, and health regimes and new ways of organizing your world. So you may find that what happens at the time of the full moon, and you start thinking, okay, well, yes, I am different in this way. How do I emphasize that? You might think, okay, well, maybe I want to go do classes on it. Maybe I want to host a group on it. Maybe I want to do this, that, and the other. You might also realize that some of those attitudes that you demonized in yourself because they were too conservative, that you also want to develop those. And so again, I think by the time the new moon comes around, you could actually have a plan in action to help bring about the great normalization, and also bring about the majestic differentiation, and kind of work both angles. I think this is a tale of two styles and how you can integrate them together. This is exciting stuff. Also, on the 17th, the North Node is heading into that place of communications. So where you've been working on a lot of home-based relationships in this last year, really where it's going now is, okay, how can I communicate who I am in my local community? How can I really reveal who I am? How can I talk with any integrity and authenticity? And so I just think that as you go into July, the juxtaposition of your two predominant styles of, and this actually, funnily enough, if we go back to the sign of Aquarius, you're ruled by both Saturn and Uranus, you know, one which is known for being a bit crazy and a bit wild and eccentric, and the other, Saturn, which is known for being stable and normal and conservative. It's like the liberal, it's like you're a Democrat and Republican in one body. Sorry to offend you if that creates some kind of offense, because you're neither or both or one or the other. Oh my goodness. Now this whole month ahead is, how can you integrate the clashing sides in a way that's going to work for you? And moreover, in the next 18 months, how can you communicate it in a way that reaches people, in a way that engages people? You may well find that you have friends that are eccentric and you're outing yourself as being a bit more normal, and vice versa. So this is uncharted territory, but the work you're doing right now could actually save this planet. You know, this is the work that we may well need. So get to it. Don't stop. In the last week, Venus going retrograde is showing that your relationships with everything outside of yourself, that is basically everyone in the whole world other than you, everyone that you're projecting on, it's time to see them differently, because it feels like you've had a judgment about the outside world, and actually you're nostalgic for a different memory of the world as you knew it, and those old relationships where maybe there was a bit more trust, a bit more faith in the process of relationships. And as Venus is retrograde from the 22nd, 23rd of July right through to the 3rd of September, it's time to remember that, yeah, actually you can have functional relationships, and what was good about them, what were the key styles of them, what were the key factors of them. And as you hone in on that, it's a time to think, okay, well, how can I bring that back in? How can I connect? How can I be in flow again with everyone rather than being in judgment? So I think this is a huge month, epic month, in fact, that is going to create a really big shift in you. And also that shift, I think, is going to really be instrumental in lifting people up. So have a good one. Okay, last of all then, Pisces. Wow, we got there. Pisces, for you then in the month of July. The full moon is happening in week 1, and that is really showing you where you've fallen a little bit out of alignment with your networks, your friendships, maybe your stepkids, or in-laws and things like that. It's all these extra people, all these networks, and people that are they're not really from your original community. They're people who are people that have come into your community, come into your life through you growing up and maturing. And it feels like you're slightly at odds with them at the time of the full moon. But actually what is going on, I think, is you're coming into a place of power with them. Now, this full moon is very, very strong. It's giving us opportunities to grow and flex and create more stable times. I actually think this is a time when you can actually go into collaboration with these people. So I would focus on, if you feel any conflict at that time, what is at the core of it? Really, what is at the core of it? Because that will just give you a sense of the resistances that you're working with to collaboration. It might be something simple. It might just be an old memory. You remember being bullied at school or something, and all of a sudden you don't want to collaborate with anyone. It's time to heal that old wound. But this full moon is giving you everything that you need to be able to create powerful collaborations with other people. So it's showing you what qualities you need. And if you take one step at a time, you will be collaborating like a pro and really reaping the rewards of it. Now, the new moon, which comes 2 weeks later, around the 17th of July, and it's a very strong day because also the North Node is shifting from Taurus into the sign of Aries. But this day is powerful. And so whatever you're taking from the full moon, in terms of who you want to collaborate with, by the 17th, you're full of ideas, awash with ideas and creativity. And it's like you're wanting to birth something quite soon. Again, take the meaning of the full moon, which is take things step by step, like one step at a time. You don't have to know the whole direction. You don't have to know. You just need to know your next step or two, and then tune in each time, each step of the way. Now, the new moon actually makes us feel quite vulnerable. There's a lot of vulnerability factors with it. So even though you've got lots of ideas that you want to get on the table and you want to get them started, it's likely this inner vulnerability is going to show up and you're going to let it go. This is your challenge. This is a big month where you can really move forwards quite considerably. This is your challenge to move beyond. So look at what you're feeling vulnerable about and then think, okay, what is the next best way to create this? And how may I move through this vulnerability? Get help if you need to. The North Node then is actually moving from the third house of communications into the second house, which is all about your values, what you're valuing right now and how that's likely to, how you're going to get through these lessons, what you need to learn about valuing and your own resources. And I actually think it's like a final, I don't want to say a final resting place of your financial karma, but it does feel like you're going to resolve some things in terms of your finances in this next 18 months. So, what I would think is collaborations, your own creativity, and how it comes together is part of the solution to you getting your finances in order. Put it this way, I don't think you're going to get your finances in order by being straight-laced about it and being practical about it. I actually think you need this creative approach and a sense of collaboration. And you may well find that from the collaboration, you might learn some important things that really helps you earn money in a way that's right for you, that gives you the freedom. Because Pisceans in general don't like to be tied down too much. So it might be that, what was ailing your financial gains was actually that you're earning money in too structured and tight a way. And so, this is a really important time for you, Pisces. It's massive. Towards the end of the month, in the last week, Venus is going retrograde, and she's retrograding in the day-to-day area of your life, which looks at health, looks at your work, looks at how you're organizing your home, literally how are you doing your day-to-day. And I often find that when we've got something a little bit difficult in the sixth house, we often realize that our day-to-day is actually kind of killing us at some level. There's something excruciating about the pace, about the routine. It's kind of antithetical to who you really are. Now, thankfully, it's just Venus retrograde. It's not like the North Node going through your sixth, because that could take 18 months for you to work through it. And it's not Pluto going through it. Or if it is, apologies, and I've got a really good video on that, check it out. But Venus retrograde in your sixth is it's time to connect into the flow. It's time to think, okay, where can I find flow in my home? How can I love the process of my routine? How can I love the process of getting healthy? How can I enjoy all of that? It's important to get into the love aspect of it, because if you're complaining and bitching about your life all the time, actually, what's going to happen is your unconscious mind, which is wanting to create the world around you, all it hears is, my life is terrible. I don't like my routine. My routine sucks. And your unconscious mind listens to you, and it is dutiful. It creates what you're bitching about. Now, obviously, you don't want to create a life that sucks or a routine that's crippling. What you want to create is this life that feels free, this life that feels inspiring, this health that's sorting itself out, like you've got a strong immune system and your body knows how to do it. So this is the time as Venus goes retrograde, and she's going to be retrograde for a good old 40 days from the 22nd, 23rd of July, right the way through to the 3rd of September. It's time to love your life completely. Love it, even if it feels fake at first. A bit like putting a smile on your face when you're not happy, and realizing that after a short period of time, the physiology of it wins over. This is a time you've got to do a real good con job on yourself. So start loving your life, your day-to-day running of your life. Love it back into being, so that your life, your unconscious mind hears how brilliant it is and starts bringing it to you. And I'm very, very sure that by the 3rd of September, that by the time it comes along, your life will have improved really considerably. And any feeling of nostalgia for a time that was better, that you might be yearning for, pining for, you'll be able to work through that. So anyway, that is the end of the Zodiac forecast for July. So there you have it. That was my really big update for July. It was quite a lot, I have to say. I won't kid you. It's pretty big stuff. If you want to talk more, if you love chatting about astrology and would like to be in a in a really nice community where you share stuff. If you'd like me to look at your chart on a Sunday night, I do a Sunday show. If you'd like to learn about astrology, then please do consider joining my absolutely 100% free community. It's at SKOOL.com/feelgoodastrology, one word. Click to join, and when I get round to it, I'll add you. It won't take long. It'll usually be done within a day, but there's lots of people. It's growing every day. There's lots of people that want to talk astrology. It doesn't matter what level of astrology you're at. You might be an expert, you might be new on your journey, but it's a place where we can chat and talk online. There's no fact checkers. I think that's important. I mean, I pay a fee to have this, so that you don't have to pay for it, basically. But I've paid so that we don't have to have fact checkers and we don't have to have adverts. It is literally a safe place for us to dive into astrology, to chat, to ask questions, and to help each other. And I'm going to be hosting, I will be hosting some workshops very shortly. I've got a free course that's going up this weekend. It's an old course, but I'm repurposing it. It's literally to teach you how to get your birth chart, how to create it, and how to view everything and what you're looking at. It's very much the nuts and bolts. But I'm also going to be starting, hopefully next month, not quite sure when, I'm still sorting it out. That might be one of my big full moon steps to take. But I'm going to be running a weekly astrology session for those that are interested. That will have a slight cost to it, because obviously I'm going to be investing quite a bit of time in it, but it will be to start to look at your birth chart in a small group of like-minded individuals. And so we'll look at, I think, probably the first house in the first week, the second house and the second, and so on and so forth. And also maybe look at a sign each week or something like that. There will be some reflective work that we can do, but essentially it's there so that we can talk and learn together, because I actually think we're much stronger when we learn together and share together. It'll be a learning experience for me too, because whenever people talk and share, we're always learning. I'm also going to be hosting some workshops for people that want to do a deep dive. I think I'm going to go with Pluto first, seeing as Pluto is such an unfathomable planet. It causes us so much transformation, and I'd really like to work with people where we can have a look at, you know, where we've had tricky Pluto planets and look at the transformation that's occurred for us, and also start to work out our Pluto coding in our charts, and then start taking it forward so we can start predicting, I can see that Pluto is coming into this alignment in my birth chart. I can see when it's coming in. I can see when it's exact. I can see when it eases off. And you can start to decode it. So hopefully from these videos, from the comments, but also from my SKOOL.com/feelgoodastrology community, we can start creating a bit of a movement. You know, we can start learning together, sharing, and also raising our vibe collectively. And that's what I'm all about, and I hope you are too. Anyway, thank you so much for joining. If you are new to my channel, I thank you so much for staying so long. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. Feel free to share, whatever. If you're a returning viewer, I absolutely adore you and I'd like to get to know you. So please do get in contact. Anyway, lots and lots of love to you wherever you are in the world. Have a flipping awesome July. And let's catch up again in August and find out how we all got on, eh? Anyway, lots of love. Bye for now.